Live in Western Oregon, this is NBC 16 News at 5:30.
This is a tragedy and an absolutely horrible thing to happen.
An early morning fire turns deadly in Sweet Home, killing 4 people. Good evening and thanks for joining us for NBC 16 at 5:30. I'm Alan Matthews. The fire is out, but the investigation is still very active. NBC 16 Stephanie Rothman has been tracking this story.
A tragic scene in Sweet Home. The only thing that remains is the charred building behind me as investigators work to figure out what exactly happened here.
I kept hearing like thump, thump, thump.
Sean Richardson lives next door on Tamarack Street. Around 3 a.m., he heard a thumping sound that caught his attention.
Next thing we know, about 7 o'clock, loud banging on our front door. Being told that we needed to evacuate.
That's when Richardson, his friend, and girlfriend saw their next-door neighbor's home on fire.
Entering the park, I could already see flames venting from the residence and torching a nearby tree. When I got on scene, there were flames venting from the east and west side windows and heavy smoke and fire.
Firefighters responded just before 7 a.m., putting out the flames quickly, but not before the 4 occupants in the house died, not able to make it out.
Beating myself up, thinking I should have done, been more aggressive about making sure that everything was okay,
Yeah, but you wouldn't think that something like this would happen.
According to Sweet Home Fire and police, there's no word on whether or not the 4 people knew each other. But Richardson says they were a family with 2 young children. Just last Monday, he briefly spoke with the father.
I didn't really interact with him much, so it's hard to say, exactly. But my girlfriend seemed pretty fond of him, so I can only imagine that he was quite a friendly person.
Thankfully, no one else was hurt in the neighborhood. Investigators will be looking into what exactly caused the fire, as an investigation is still ongoing. Reporting in Sweet Home, I'm Stephanie Rothman.
Officials are working to identify the victims. Of course, we'll bring you the latest developments as we get them. Independent restaurants in Oregon have been able to get funds from the federal Paycheck Protection Program, but a bagel maker in Eugene says the rules connected to the program are a huge headache. NBC 16's Tom Adams joins us with that story and what Justin Freeman is suggesting for fixes. Tom?
That's right, Alan. Freeman has been the owner of the West Eugene Bagel Sphere store for the last 3 years. Now, don't get him wrong. He says the PPP funding is a critical lifeline for him. His big point is that the rules connected to the funding need some rethinking.
Work has become home for Bagel Sphere owner Justin Freeman. He says he hasn't had a day off for the last 45 days.
But I would say that we are thriving. We're surviving and thriving at the same time.
Freeman runs a bakery with bagels the chief product. He is thrilled again that a shop like his was able to score a payroll protection program loan in the first round. However,
for those of us who have been shut down or have had our operations altered in support of public health, they're now asking us to spend the money very quickly. In a way that may not make sense.
Freeman tells me the rules under the program are just too rigid for restaurants. Money has to be spent within 8 weeks of receiving it. Plus, the rules assume that you still have a lot of workers on staff.
We can't do that and comply with public safety and social distancing. Also, a lot of our staff simply do not want to return to work right now.
Freeman is suggesting the feds be more flexible on the PPP rules, especially for those businesses like his that had to lay off nearly everyone.
We need a longer time frame within which to spend the funds that we've received. Rather than an 8-week time period, 90 days would be extremely helpful.
And allow businesses to use more than 25% of funding for monthly overhead costs, rent, insurance, and new equipment. Doing that, Freeman says,
we'll do the very best to ensure that we will have the maximum chance of survival and coming out of this on top.
So, with continued good takeout business and more product development, Freeman has high hopes that he'll be able to ride out this COVID new normal.
And he adds another piece of good news is that he's been able to rehire 6 of the more than 30 employees he had to lay off last month. Alan?
All right, thank you so much, Tom. Well, Oregonians are newly eligible for unemployment benefits in the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, including the self-employed and contract workers. Workers can apply in 3 ways: through email, regular mail, or fax. It could take a few hours or days to get a response. Workers who already applied through the regular unemployment system should follow instructions on the Employment Department website. Turning now to the coronavirus cases here in the state of Oregon, the number of the new cases in the state has decreased for the 6th day in a row. Oregon Health Authority announced 31 new cases and 7 deaths. There are more than 2,300 cases and almost 100 deaths. 565 of those cases are people who are hospitalized. 102 are patients in ICU and 49 on ventilators. In our region, numbers have mostly remained the same. Benton County stands at 29 cases. Lynn County added 2 more cases. They now have 81. Here in Lane County, we remain at 50 cases for the 5th day now. A total of 27 people have recovered and no one is hospitalized. Deschutes County remains at 75 cases. Douglas County stands at 23 and Coos County has 15 cases, all in the Shutter Creek Correctional Institution. Unhoused people who test positive for coronavirus can now quarantine inside a tiny home unit. The county bought the VA clinic on River Road, but needed a temporary site while renovations are made. One idea was an ordinance that would require hotel and motels to provide space for recovering coronavirus patients. But Sponsors Inc., the nonprofit who built the tiny homes, stepped up, canceling the need for the measure.
Sponsors stepped forward and said, hey, we have these tiny homes that we have built and recently constructed, and they're completed now. We would be willing to let the county use those free of charge.
The tiny homes are located in the Jeffrey Commons Tiny Home Village off Highway 99. They were built as transitional housing for people getting out of prison, but Sponsors Executive Director saw a need during the pandemic.
But given the fact that we have this resource, it feels like it's our job to be able to use these units in the best way, the most necessary and efficient way possible.
Solomon says the units will be provided to the county as long as necessary. Lane County is fully responsible for organizing and offering medical care to individuals who quarantine in the tiny homes. Health concerns and social distancing have canceled most all events and performances. NBC 16's Lauren Negretti reports on some relief funding in the works for arts and culture.
The box office is closed for venues like the Liberty Theater in North Bend.
We take in revenue from ticket sales and from our community as donations to keep our doors open, and then we spend it back out by providing excellent entertainment.
Nearly 20 years ago, the Oregon legislature created a permanent cultural trust as a way to protect cultural organizations for future generations.
Without allocating some of the fund now, there may not, unfortunately, be a lot of culture left.
Rogers says the trust is planning to use $10 million from that fund to create a cultural emergency relief fund.
And making sure that we can do everything we can to help organizations during this time.
Eligibility is limited to the more than 1,400 nonprofits registered through the trust. Registration is always open. A nonprofit in Coos County that benefits from the Oregon Cultural Trust is Liberty Theater for its restoration project. Woods says the trust has contributed over $50,000 in their 7-phase project to bring the building up to grade. Work is underway now to add 2,000 square feet for accessibility at the lobby level.
Our volunteers will not have to go up and down those stairs. You can get right onto the stage from that new green room area and from that new set construction area.
For many community arts and theater programs, the relief fund will keep them going. Rogers hopes the proposal is approved when the legislature meets again. Reporting in Coos County, I'm Lauren Negretti.
2 St. Vincent de Paul retail locations open again weeks after the nonprofit decided to close all its stores in response to the pandemic. Both locations are in Eugene, the store on Division Avenue off River Road and the Seneca Street store. Both locations have limited access and have been rearranged to allow for proper social distancing for customers and staff.
And so the idea is that when we're starting to run out of product, it's better for us to have a way to get into those stores, and it's at least on the few of the stores, to open up so that we can gain access to the product and we can get the product out to the low-income people.
McDonald's says that one of their main missions is to service low-income families and unhoused people, and this step fits in with that mission. Both stores are open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. 7 days a week. All donated items must be bagged or boxed. They're not accepting furniture or other large items. Don't forget, today is the last day to register to vote in the Oregon primary. The primary is still scheduled for May 19th. You can register online. All you'll need is either an Oregon driver's license, permit, or ID card number. Today is also the last day to change your party affiliation. Voter pamphlets went out last week, and ballots, they are getting mailed this week. And when we are not on the air, you can still keep in touch with us. Make sure to sign up for our newsletter to get the latest updates on local stories in your inbox. To sign up, visit NBC16.com/sign-up. Type in your email and click sign up. Well, coming up on your only local news at 5:30, unemployment numbers continue to rise in the state. What are some tips to avoid ID theft?
Ahead for us tonight, the first known positive test for a dog here in the U.S. and what you should know about your pet. Also, how travel has been transformed by the outbreak and what you might encounter on your next flight on NBC Nightly News.